So today I have the pleasure of interviewing LaShawnna Harris, who has founded two companies. She also has two master degrees and has been a principal as well. So I look forward to having her share her story today about what's going on with her business, how she started, how she's doing, the struggles, the pains, the successes, all of that good stuff. And also she has two girls as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to hear how she's putting all of that together. All right, so thank you so much, LaShawnna, for your time. I know people are going to be excited to hear more about your story and what you're doing and get some insights from you. As a reminder, towards the end, I will answer any question you want or give any advice you want on advertising, marketing, or general business advice. But I look forward to diving right in. So let's start off with like right now. COVID. You started your last business, your newest business, Sheer Talent, I believe, in 2019, correct? Uh, so you had a
Yeah.
little bit of room before COVID hit. So how's that going? Can you tell us more about Sheer Talent and what you're doing there, as well as your other business, and how's it going?
Sure. I started Shared Talent in 2019 with a co-founder, and the Shared Talent is really about connecting community resources and experts in the community with schools who need folks who can help them solve problems across industries. So connecting freelancers with schools to solve problems for school improvement. And it, in 2019, it was a great idea, and we were like super excited about getting going, and schools were giving us lots of feedback. And then COVID hit, and school budgets were slashed. Schools became extremely uncertain places in terms of like what they needed, when they needed it, how they'd be able to just support their staff and their students. And for the most part, business and potential business dried up like overnight. So, we pushed through a bit and tried to pivot because ultimately our goal is to help support families and communities. So we did a conference that you and Julius were part of, and we
Yes,
were able
we
to
loved it.
provide some remote learning resources for families, but it just isn't a revenue generator for us. And and it's slightly tangential to our business model. And right now, that business is it's pretty much on hold until we can either figure out a pivot or really get the business we need from schools because they just aren't in a place to contract with folks. So Creative Station actually started in 2016, but did not become active until 2018 when I left the Department of Education. So I pursued entrepreneurship full time, and it's a consulting business. We provide support on strategy and improvement and continuous improvement, and that I did it, but I did it. I put it to the side. Right, it was consulting. It could be my bread and butter, but Share Talent is a startup. It has a tech aspect. It's like super exciting, and I put Creative Station to the side. And then during COVID, I realized that the school improvement consulting and leadership development is my wheelhouse.
Hmm.
And as much as I wanted to pursue Shared Talent, Creative Station is really what is in demand right now, and how I can be most helpful and really use my superpowers in a way that is beneficial to schools, families, and even some small business owners. But also for me, like financially, it just works.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that I love how you explain that and you're sharing the difficulty, and thank you so much for being so honest about what's going on. I know I'm in the same business and we're having the same issues in terms of things slowing down, budgets not being released from schools. And I think one thing that you touched upon, and I would love to dive deeper into with you, is so we talked a little bit before the call about this in terms of people often say entrepreneurship is about passion, right? And to be happy and love what you do, right? But clearly, you have found because of COVID 19, what you love to do seems to be uh, shared talent, right? but your wheelhouse is the consulting agency. So how are you finding that balance between going after your wheelhouse and what produces money and income, especially right now with what you're passionate about? And I wouldn't say you're not passionate about your other business. I wouldn't say that, but I'll just say there's one that excites you more right now, right? There's one that excites you more right now. So how do you like mentally go through that balance of you have to make income and pursue what's working, where you're getting your revenue from, versus what's exciting, what you're more passionate about?
Right. So I think I had to take a step back and think about why shared talent was exciting. Right. So I think part of that had to do with it was a startup, was part of some pitch competitions and accelerators. It was this whole startup environment, and doing something new and being part of that is really exciting. And you can get caught up in that environment and not realize that the business isn't viable, right? And then I think going back to my why, it was like, why are we starting shared talent? We're starting shared talent so that we can help schools improve at an accelerated rate. So if that's my why and it doesn't necessarily fit in this business, going back to Creative Station, which is not only my wheelhouse, but it was founded because I'm passionate about school improvement. It's just a different vehicle. But it was hard in the moment to see the difference, right? Because
Yes.
Creative Station is it's much harder to run because it's me, right? So in terms of the service, it's me showing up at schools, that's me coaching people, that's me building a brand, and I'm super introverted. So I can't hide behind uh, a brand with Creative Station like I can with Shared Talent. Shared Talent looks like, it's this huge team of people, and the website looks a particular way, and I'm connecting other folks and they are doing the work. Whereas Creative Station is me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I realized that I was maybe running from the difficulty of running that business, not so much that I'm not passionate, I don't love it. It was just harder.
It's a different process. You enjoy the process of the other, where you have a team. You're able to feed off the team. You don't feel it's all
Right.
you. Exactly. No, that's awesome. That's interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think along with that, I think another thing people would love to know is, how did you decide from being a principal, being in the DOE, right, having security, having benefits, having set income, to deciding this is the time when you made the switch to becoming an entrepreneur? Because a lot of people want to know often, when is the right time, right? When's the moment? What things should I know is, okay, I should start now or I should wait? What's the process for you to say, okay, I'm going to dive into this?
Right. So it was not ideal. It hasn't been ideal, but God and the universe make sure
Amen.
that I've been able to
Amen.
feed my children and have a place to live. So again, I think everybody has their own individual path, but for me, I had grown I was very clear about what I wanted to do. I wanted to help schools, and I wanted to be close to school leaders and to be autonomous in that work.
Mm-hmm.
And how I had ascended within the Department of Education, the closer I got to top leadership, top leadership position, the less I was able to do that. And I realized that either I stay in this role and kind of, I guess, kind of status quo type of work, or I branch out and do what I feel is best and what my purpose is, right? And that's helping schools. And I just decided to leave. I
Wow.
had taken a new position. I thought it was a position that I thought it was like a dream position, and it wasn't that. So I realized like I have enough experience, and I also, at that point, I think a lot of times you're thinking about like what's next, and then you have this career trajectory. Like I want to be a VP, or I want to be an assistant principal, and then I want to be a principal, and I want to be a superintendent. And when I realized that I had already done those things, and I didn't necessarily want to be a superintendent, which was like the next role,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to think of transitioning differently, because it
Wow.
was more about what I could do versus what the position could be for me.
Wow. I love
And a
that.
caveat behind some of that work too was I inherited some money. Like at a particular time,
Mm-hmm.
I inherited some money. Like my father passed away,
Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
suddenly, and it was an opportunity that I would never have received at that time. So I took advantage of the time and opportunity.
Wow, that's great. It's kind of like his last gift to you allowed you to pursue your dream, right? Allowed you to pursue your dream. So that,
A police officer for quite a while and was really excited about retiring and all the things that he was going to do when he retired. And he really only had 5 years of retirement before he suddenly passed away before he turned 58.
wow,
So I felt like that was also a sign, like do what you want while you can.
that's true. Yeah, that's wow. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm glad that you were able to use that as a lesson and also as a foundation to springboard going after what you're passionate about and building out and living your life now, right? Rather than waiting till 60, 65, 70 to actually pursue life. So, yeah, thank you so much for
Right.
sharing that. Wow, and so I guess let's talk about both businesses, right? People often ask me, so I'm kind of like you, I juggle. I have a few different businesses I juggle, right? And people ask me, oh, should I start a new business? Should I do this? Should I focus? So for you, what was kind of like what was the mindset behind starting the second chapter, I would say, of your story? Starting the, well, I'll say the third chapter, right? The second chapter is when you first started the business, the first business. Third chapter was it, and trying to write two chapters at once, right? Trying to write two chapters at once. So, what would you say was the cause of you starting Shared Talent? Uh, what would you say is the intersection between how you run that and how you run your consulting business? And how'd you balance that?
Okay. So shared talent wasn't, but I'm an idea person. Like I'm an idea person, a strategy person. I'm constantly thinking about how things can run better.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this idea or multiple ideas that I kept sharing with a friend of mine who was also a former colleague from work. And every other day it was like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And we had an opportunity to join a business accelerator in with Communitas America. And we're
Okay.
like, oh, well, we have this idea. Let's join. Let's see if we get in. And we didn't initially get in the first round. And then I guess somebody dropped out, and they were like, hey, there's a space for you, so we joined.
It works.
And lo and behold, just an idea on in our heads, not on paper. At one point, we were gonna drop out because we were like, we're not where all these other businesses are. But we persevered, we pushed through, and we actually won
Wow.
the great, which
Wow.
was the $10,000 for our business.
Congratulations.
And
That's
by that,
awesome.
thank you. We were so surprised. We were like, wait, us? we But by that time we had a name, we had a logo, and we had this really cool idea, and we had momentum behind us. So and it was starting fresh, this new idea, this new business. Like I said, we're in this startup world, and we're like learning these things. And then my co-founder was not able to continue with the company, so then it became me by myself with two businesses. I'm really trying to figure out how to make them both run. Um, and I think with so again, I put my energy there because I saw potential and there was lots of opportunity. And when I made the decision to put my energy there, that was like right at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yes.
It was like, yeah, I had to pick one,
Mm-hmm.
and I gave it as much as I could, from say February through late October.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that I could still do and pursue what I feel like my purpose as well as my passion through Creative Station. But it was just a mind shift for me. And then really think, you asked a question about how do I run the businesses differently. I think I was more with Shared Talent. I looked at our website as a funnel and
I see.
the branding, right? So Shared Talent has a really interesting brand on social media,
Mm-hmm.
and it's easier to create content for a matchmaking type of service in terms of freelancers. Creative Station, on the other hand, with my consulting is a lot harder. And I'm like actually in that space of trying to figure out how to craft the brand because it's not as clear as shared talent.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said before, it was a little easier, and now I'm in the hard space of really thinking about how do I get people to know what I do as a consultant, what our firm does as a consultant, because we also have subcontractors and things like that. So I feel like although the business is older, I'm newer at that and crafting that vision and not vision, the brand is really built around who I am
Mm-hmm.
as a person versus like the company.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing all of that. And I think there's something you touched on, which I want you to know a lot of entrepreneurs go through that issue. And I myself, even as a brand strategist, go through that issue. I think it's often easier to brand things outside of us than it is to brand ourselves. Because when we brand ourselves, that means branding is limiting in a way, in terms of you have to say, I do this and not that. And it's hard to say that, and it's hard to select that when it's yourself. So it's this big issue of being, who am I clearly, or how do I want to promote myself to the world? And that's incredibly tough, because you have to say no to a million things, and it's different when it's your organization, but external shared talents, more people, versus your consulting business. That's you. So you have to say, I am not this, I am not that. This is me, and you are essentially saying to the world, this is all of you, even though internally you know it's not. And so that's a huge conflict that is very hard to resolve. So maybe that's a question we'll tackle at the end. It's up to you, but it is incredibly tough. I still have that issue. Even up to now, I'm like, I want to add this and I do this too. So it's incredibly tough, and I feel your pain. I do. I really feel your pain. Okay. So in going that, what you think, I think a lot of people who are parents and who are thinking about pursuing entrepreneurship, what is that like for you, right? Parenting and running a business. Because being a parent is running a business, right? In many aspects, setting resources, pulling them in, things like that. So how is that for you?
So I think there's benefit to having my children are very their age difference is pretty large. My oldest is 21 and she's away in the army. And
Wow.
then I have 8-year-old who's home with me doing 100% for learning. And in some ways I don't this scary because she can help a little. But in other ways, it's good that we are working remotely and the children are home because I don't have to manage a whole lot of movement with
Mm,
her. So I think honestly it's hard trying to get your work done simultaneously while is doing her work. But I've helped her become pretty independent, and she's pretty tech savvy, so she doesn't need a lot of no support. But she definitely needs time. So being able to be really clear about how I schedule my day and try to get as much done while she's not um, you know, get as much done before she is like knee deep into her work and
nice.
may need some help. Um, Grace, because there's probably way too much TV time and iPad time for her when I need to work. But this is not normal circumstance, not a normal situation. And, you take a moment to pause and reflect and say, okay, give me that iPad. Let's do something. That's just way more productive.
No, I think that's real. So in many ways, it's harder, but a bit easier because of the remote learning and the fact that you're able to work from home right now, right? Um, but I think that is something I think all parents, or caregivers have to balance, right? Being able to be there, and I think that's a big thing right now is, are you going to have to let them be on their iPad or their TV for this time, because they shouldn't be bored, right? Just because we have to work. So
Right.
they
Right.
shouldn't be bored just because they have, but being constructive. So I think and there's a whole different way we can go. I think I'll say that for the Uplift Communities interview, in terms of is letting children, and I'll save this question for later, but just let you think, letting children play on their iPads or interact with electronics more, then passes that okay because of where the world is heading, right? And I guess we can dive into that on another interview with Uplift Communities. But I think that is a question all parents are struggling with, and the really good ones like yourself, uh, you're balancing, okay, you can't use it fully as a crutch. You're trying to make sure it is constructive in her use.
Right. I mean, but I do have something that I want to add. It's more like what I have found with her being home with me and as an entrepreneur, I allow her to participate in my business and I teach her things
Love that.
because she's interested. So for our conference, she has a small workshop in our conference because she saw me working on it and she asked me what I was doing because she was home with me. And she said, "Can I do one?" At first, I hesitated and I thought, why not? It's my conference, of course, right? She's 8, and she was very mindful of how she went about it. She did a really good job, but it was
That's
because that
amazing.
opportunity presented itself. She wasn't home, if she was in school, I was doing this, it never would have happened, right? So I think there are benefits. I think allowing children to do things that in the past maybe we weren't always allowed to do because our parents didn't like us to make a mess, they didn't want us bothering them, all those things, right? They are capable of doing things that we often don't think that they can do, and now I think there's a space for that.
Yeah, and I think I've always said this, and I think that's so important. One of the things, while you have to give up a lot in terms of working, like I have you up early to do this interview, so thank you. Give up in terms of working and family time, especially when the business is starting or growing. I think you get back with the opportunity you can provide your children and your family members if you so choose, in terms of giving her real experience in a conference, right? And they, getting real experience in a conference. And you never know. Sometimes kids take a liking to this, right? And they pursue it and it allows them. And I think one of the biggest things people misinterpret with business, and you must know from like having 2 master's degrees and in your full college education, I felt like so I went to law school. I graduated from law school at Vanderbilt, and I also went to their business school. I audited the business school for the MBA. I audited that, and I found in my first year of business, I felt I learned more than all of that. So I don't know if you I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think business forces you to learn so many things and become proficient, even though you may not feel proficient. I know I certainly don't feel proficient at sometimes, at so many different aspects of life, of negotiations, of business skills. And I think running your own business and being able to expose your children to that gives them a leg up in life. So they know how to interact with people better. They know how they gain management skills. They learn how to allocate resources. So what do you really think about the, I guess, the positives and negatives of running a business from a family perspective, or just in general, in terms of learning, in terms of growing, things like that?
Seeing family members run businesses is invaluable, right? I grew up with a family full of entrepreneurs, right? And as a kid, I didn't necessarily look at them as entrepreneurs. They just were these people who had these businesses that I loved, that were part of my family. But it helped me understand that it was something that I could do. Like I've always had the desire to have my own business. I didn't always know what it would be. I definitely didn't think it would have anything to do with education early on. But my grandfather owned businesses, my dad owned businesses, my cousins, my great aunt and her husband owned a laundromat. But these are things that I was a 6-year-old kid going and helping take the quarters out of the washing machines and didn't realize, like, wow, they had this awesome business, right? I just happened to be there, but nobody really was explicit about you can own your own business, but being part of possibility. And I took it with me. I carried it with me into adulthood. And then now, hindsight being 2020, I was like, wow, that was like invaluable exposure and experience. But and to be able to continue to do that for other family members and for my kids and my friends' kids, I think is really important.
Wow. Yeah, I think in normalizing, right, business, running a business, and I think like what we're doing here, showing owning a business is a possibility, showing running a business is a possibility, right? And not feeling like it's this foreign thing is really important. Okay, so I think we're going to start wrapping up soon, but I guess I wanted to kind of talk about your journey a bit. And you said something in running Accelerate. I actually was part of Accelerate. I think it's a fun experience. It pushes you. I think there was a beauty in that story, and something I want to touch upon, a beauty in what you did not feel ready, right? You did not feel ready, and then you won. So you went from feeling like, I'm guessing from not feeling ready, feeling like you were the least qualified in terms of the group, but then ending up with the winning proposal or winning that $10,000 grant. And I know that feeling, especially when you're a new business, to get money, especially a lump sum. It feels so, it feels justifying, right? It feels validating. You're like, okay, I have something that could work. I know it looked hard, but maybe I can do it, right? It's that piece of hope that you grab onto, right? And some joy as well. So with that said, did you feel qualified? Did you feel ready when you started your business? If so, what you think made you feel ready? If not, what were the reasons that you did not feel that you were prepared or it was the right time? Because I think that's a big issue. People struggle with, this is not for me, or I'm not good enough to do this. And that's why I pointed out my story of, I felt I learned more my first year in business than law school and business school put together, because I just felt that, yes, it's instrumental. I know some of the skills help me and things like that, but I felt that if you start learning business and going through, you can do it without going to law school. You can do it without business school. You can do it without a college degree if you really stick to it and push it and learn.
Mhm. So, so by the time we won the prize, we had a solid idea. So we're definitely confident in our ability to turn that into a viable business. I think where I got stuck was the the steps, right? So it I think sometimes we look at it this big task, and how do we take this business that's really small and make it this multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar business, and that was hard, right? So just knowing how to get from, we won this $10,000 to like getting a website up, like what do I do first? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a common problem that entrepreneurs have. Because even if $10,000 may seem like a lot of money, but it really isn't, right? And you could blow that whole $10,000 on a website that's terrible, right? Or you could, pay some attorney or an accountant for some services that you don't really need, and then your money's gone. So I think being able to have a strategic plan is really important. And then also understand, like, and talk about like minimum viable product a lot, right? That MVP. But what does that really look like? And I listened to this podcast. I forget exactly where it was from. It might have been Harvard Business Review or something like that. Where it
HBR.
talks about how to get your first 100 customers or 1,000 customers, with a small number of customers, right? And really thinking about how to go low tech before you go high tech,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you don't have the skill set. So that was really helpful for me. But it took me being able to like find a resource, like listening to podcasts and like educating myself on like what those next steps need to be, because if not, you can be overwhelmed and extremely discouraged. And when I realized that like Airbnb and Uber were like making all their matches manually, or like
Yes.
Uber with taking information and then going and finding a black car for their customers, or Airbnb was like you put in a request and they found a room for you and they got back to you, doing all of it manually. I was like, oh, that makes sense. I get it. But if you don't have a network of people telling you that, you've got to get that information, because you'll think that you have to do everything right now.
Mm-hmm.
with even less than $10,000. And
Hmm.
that often feels like, it's impossible.
Yeah, that is spot on. I was just telling there's a company that I invested in, and they're building up it's a food app. And I was using the store of Airbnb too in terms of manually. People didn't at first. Airbnb was, let me not say at first, when they was trying to get to their core in New York, they had to go in and take the photos of the places themselves, right? And people don't know. They're like, oh, it's always been uploaded. No, you had to go and do the manual labor and running around New York City doing that. So I think that's so important to realize the first 10 steps is much different than what you'll need for the other 990 to get to 1,000 steps. So I think that's super important. Uh, so I guess now I would like to start wrapping up by
Yep.
asking. Sorry.
I was gonna say, and learning from the things that you do, right? They knew that they had to go take the photos because the first photos that they had were terrible.
Yes, yes, exactly. So I would say for you, what question do you have that you'd like me to answer uh, regarding anything about your business or any advice that I can help share to see you continue climbing?
But it's a personal question, so people can see like entrepreneurs have real struggles, right?
We
So
do.
I am by nature an extremely introverted person. It takes me a while to like warm up, and like I know you was flowing because we had a bunch of chats over time. But now I'm going to only be successful as my networking is.
Hmm.
How would you say, or what would you say, like the top three things that say an introverted person can do to start to build their personal brand to support their business?
The top three things. So I'll say I'm also introverted. It may not seem like that, but I'm introverted. I think the correct term is I tell and my fiance, she doesn't get this. I was like, I'm an extroverted introvert. She's like, you talk so much to people. I was like, but it takes a lot of energy, right? I think introvertness is classified, and extrovertness is where you get your energy from, right? So me spending time talking to people and doing it zap it. I don't want to say zap because that's negative, but it takes energy from me, right? So I don't have that much energy to give, and I quickly get to a lower battery situation. I think there's a few things you can do in terms of that. The energy stuff, that's harder, right? I wanted to start off with that because I don't have a solution for the energy change. But in terms of being comfortable with being shy and being in this, one I would say, and is getting a coach to work through your shyness, putting you in situations so you can get more comfortable in those situations. So that person would, and I know it seems like a broad thing rather, but I think it's better advice than giving you specific tips because I'm learning that usually there's one thing that's very important to do. However, it is when you start doing two, three, four, five, that's usually when you get the most benefits. It's more cohesive together. So getting a coach who can help point out, okay, I need you to go put yourself in this situation, go to a coffee shop and talk to five people, right? Who gives you actual real life exercises to get comfortable with doing that. Um, and so that's the number one thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say you should want to think about is there are there are some very good books. So there is a book called reading this book called 92. I think it's 92 Ways to Make Small Talk or something. I will send you the title. Let me even pull up my Audible. So now you're seeing my secrets of how I don't look like an introvert. Uh, let me see. And I'll post that book below for everybody who's here who's an introvert like us. The third thing is realizing that, so I guess I'll give you my secret too. So I'm very good at closing deals, but because I'm an introvert, it's hard for me to maintain relationships. Like do the whole process and have the energy to close at well because I can't, it's just hard for me to do that. And so part of the reason Julius, my business partner, is so great because he loves continue the relationships and keeping up to the day to day or week to week. I just, no matter how much I love people, I just don't have the energy to do that. And so he helps keep relevant. So finding somebody, and it doesn't have to be a business partner, it can be maybe business development or something. So you can have them open the deals, find leads, do things like that, build your personal brand. Doing that, I think, would be highly beneficial for you. Okay? So thank you so much,
Thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, especially this early morning. Thank you so much for all the work you do with New York Minority
Yeah.
Business Coalition too. I love what you're doing to bring us all together, all of us New York vendors together to hopefully help us get more contracts and make more impact and build out, so we can hire more people. So thank you so much, LaShawnna. I hope you have an amazing day, and please let me know if you need anything. I look forward to working with you more in the future, and look forward to see both your businesses thriving. Right? Can't wait to see that.